Donald Trump is the long shot, right?
Yeah. Oh, and it's not a long shot. It's a completely lost case, no chances whatsoever.
Okay.
Just
What about
no
the other?
chances.
What about?
Because betting side will never ever pay 4.5 odds for something that may still happen. Obviously, it's not going to happen. However,
Mhm.
it's much different picture on U.S. presidential election.
Okay.
Here for Joe Biden, you have odds 1.83. So you put $100, you get back 183.
Mhm.
However, on Donald Trump, if you put the same $100, the odds are 2.0. So if you put $100, you will get back $200. So Joe Biden is a slight favorite to win a presidency, but it's very different picture from a popular vote.
Wow, that's a tough one to vote on or bet on. But and I would hate to bet against the man I want to win. So that's interesting. Rakesh, what are your thoughts on our political bantering that's going on here, and how is it impacting where you're living today and going tomorrow?
Um, in terms of Hong Kong, I think it doesn't make a difference. I don't think it's the brand image of Hong Kong is already dissolved. In terms of New Zealand, I think the point of view is that the stronger America gets, the economically, whoever makes America stronger economically, it's good for New Zealand because they will have another market. Traditionally, New Zealand exports to Australia and China, and to a lesser extent Russia, but if they have not been able to do too much in the American market. It's as far as milk and beef is concerned. Um, I think they would be looking to make greater inroads into the American market, and if that does well, they would be very interested in that. It's purely economics that I can see. In terms of actual left versus right, New Zealand has currently a left-leaning government. I think that government is popular, and but there is now an increasing challenge from the right. They have chosen a woman leader who is quite pugnacious in terms of her attitude, and that has shown some results. The gap in the lead has reduced. It hasn't disappeared, but it's reduced.
I agree with you. She is becoming a powerful voice. And look who we have visiting us today on Medical Friday. Welcome, Dr. Dhaman.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Namaste.
Please correct me if I mispronounce your name. I'm horrible with pronouncing names, but I work on it.
That's all right. No?
Dr. Bill Trezevant, he's put up with me, but he knows my Texas accent. So, but anyway, how are you doing today? This is evening.
Good. Yeah, this is evening time for us, and doing very well. So, what about all of you?
We're doing great. So what I want to share with you, I've taken some of your advice from last week for my eyes, and it has made some difference. Now, I have not put it full force into 100% practice because that's a huge discipline to reset.
Right.
But it is relieving the pressure behind my eyes, and so I thank you for that.
So I'm glad to hear that. Thank you very much. Please follow it slightly more religiously.
I will.
Yes.
I will. It's hard when you're working all day in front of a screen, but I'm learning little tricks so that when we move to different people, I close my eyes, take a couple of deep breaths, get into those practices, because I will tell you, I was getting scared with what was going on with my headaches and eyes and a pressure. But what the thing was is it was in plain sight. The problem was right there.
Right. Well, it happens very often sometimes. That the problem is they're big. The solution is very simple and visible, but very difficult to follow.
That
And
that is correct. So some of the things that you are also sharing with us were some of the precautions that we should be taking during the time of wearing a mask. And I kind of want to reiterate on that because I don't think people are always listening as much. And it's always good to refresh these things for people, these little checklists. But, you know, wearing the glasses, making sure you wear these properly and tape them. And I'd like for you to share a little bit about that and then give us some more insight on things we could be doing to exercise our eyes.
right. So first of all, regarding COVID, I would say that until or unless we have a vaccine out and which is reliable and we get ourselves vaccinated, we must take precautions because precaution is the only thing that can save us. We cannot rely on our immunity because every body responds very differently to the virus infection. How would your body respond? You cannot predict that. So it's better to take precautions and not get infected. For that, three things need to be done. One is protect your nose and mouth by wearing a proper mask. And the medical people or the healthcare workers or people at higher risk should wear N95 masks. Others can wear a normal surgical mask or a 3-layered cloth mask. You should also protect your eyes by wearing glasses. If you already have a spectacle prescription glasses, that's perfectly fine. If you do not have, just wear some plain glasses. Third is use hand sanitation. Wash your hands when you're at home, or use hand sanitizer, alcohol-based hand sanitizer when you're outside. If you happen to touch a surface or thing which is unfamiliar to you. When you meet strangers, meet them with mask on. At home, you need not take all these precautions because people are familiar to you. But the moment you step out of the house, mask, glasses, and say a portable hand sanitizer should be an important part of what you carry with you.
Oh,
So
that is
Okay.
and again, it's always good to just refresh what we need to be doing every day because they're simple and they're easy to forget, right? To wash our hands, and there's a right way of doing it, right? Sanitize. Rakesh has a kit that he takes when they go out places that have a mask but the glasses, this is very important because people don't realize from what I've been learning, COVID can actually enter through the eye, correct?
Correct. It can, yes. Theoretically, it can. Some studies have also shown that possibly can. So let us play it safe, let us err on the safer side and wear glasses also.
Yes.
That's
okay. Yes. And Doctor, I have a question because, we are in that phase of this, whereas before we were just completely defenseless. But now we're a little farther along with all these vaccine developments that are currently underway. And so right now, for the vast majority of people that have not contracted it, wearing the mask and taking these safety precautions right now really will serve as the bridge until we get to a vaccine, so that the majority of them can, in fact, avoid ever being infected if they just stick to it during this this period of time. Am I right about that, or what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely right. This is exactly the objective of wearing a mask and taking these precautions now. That save yourself, protect yourself till the vaccine is out. When the vaccine is out, get yourself vaccinated without getting infected, build up your immunity like that. So that is the right approach.
Okay, and if I had one more question, because I've been confused with regard to the various statements that people have made. And there is this theme that's been going around, the herd immunity. Right. And it's really confusing because on the one hand, the proponents of that school of thought say, just let everybody get it, and then eventually, enough people will be vaccinated or be infected and develop antibodies that the rest of the population should be okay, versus that segment of the population that says, let's just wear the masks until we get to the vaccine. How do you look at those statements, and how should we evaluate those?
So it's a very tricky thing to understand. By herd immunity, what is meant is two things. One is the non-specific immunity, which everyone has against, say, bacteria, virus, and all, which is not to a particular specific strain of virus. Mm-hmm. The generic immunity that we have, and then we have the specific immunity. Specific immunity is towards that particular organism, a particular virus, a particular strain of the virus. Mm-hmm. that immunity can come up only when somebody gets infected or somebody gets vaccinated. And so what is being talked about is, as in herd immunity, is basically how the specific immunity will develop to this virus. Yes, if we expose the whole population to virus, a lot of people will get infected by that and develop the immunity, and the transmission may stop. But the risk is, what is the flip side? That a large number of people who are at very, very high risk of severe disease. So older people, people who are diabetic, people who are obese, people who got cardiac issues, people who got respiratory issues, there the mortality rate and the incidence of severe disease is very, very high. That risk is not worth taking. That is what was responsible for very large number of deaths in the Europe, in UK, even New York also. And that's a risk which is not worth taking. So to mitigate that risk, we need to take precaution. And so to mitigate risk to those 10% of people, the rest, the 90% of people should also take precaution. So let us say 75% of people are young, they don't have any complicating factors, they don't have other risk factors, and probably they will not get severe disease. But they also need to take precautions, because to save those 25% of people who are at a higher risk of getting severe disease, and where the risk of death or mortality rate is much higher. Although the overall mortality rate is, say, 1 to 3%, but if you take high-risk people or people who are in the older age group, there the mortality percentage is almost 30 to 35%. So that to mitigate that risk, others need to take precaution. So the precaution may not be to save myself, but precaution may be to save the whole world.
Okay. And Rakesh, I mean, where do you come down on this argument between herd immunity, which, as we just heard, brings with it a cost of death to a number of people? So that's more of a high risk versus bridging it with and getting to a vaccine. Rakesh?
Okay, I can just speak on what scientific logic I'm aware of. The doco that I was checking out, the coronavirus, is already got more than 30 different strains. Some of them are more virulent, some of them less so. With herd immunity, for a large country, the cost of absolute numbers of human lives is horrendous, and if you have the more virulent form, which is more likely to prevail amongst the various strains, you can have deaths that are in the millions.
Wow.
I don't think there's going to be much herd immunity, because the way this virus operates, doubt it. It attacks the immune system in such a comprehensive way, and incrementally improving its own performance. Because of the huge number of base pairs, I think it's got a lot of scope for mutations.
Okay.
And with that, I don't see. We can win some battles, but the war will be a long time winning.
Okay.
Wow.
Kimberly?
Well, I would like to hear from Sasha on this point first, and then I'll give my point of view.
I think the vaccine is grossly overestimated, and I don't think that people have to think about vaccine as a panacea from all these problems with the coronavirus. It's not at all. First of all, there are well over 60 types of coronaviruses. It's very difficult to imagine vaccines that will cure or at least prevent all of them or most of them. Its effectiveness, some people believe that it will be around 70%, but even if it's 75 or 80%, it's still not good enough. There are a lot of people who will refuse to be vaccinated. So if you are vaccinated and your neighbor is not, then what is the effect? Are you really immune, knowing that there are so many types of coronavirus that perhaps 70 or maybe even 80% it's effective? So you are still in in the danger zone. So I think you still have to really rigorously do all the usual things like washing your hands, wearing mask, keeping physical distance, and you have to do it for a foreseeable future probably, and that's far more important in my opinion than vaccine or no vaccine.
Oh yeah, I agree. I think we're all in agreement that herd immunity is not exactly the thing to do at this time. And my thoughts on this is that herd immunity has been used over the years when you understand how to treat a particular disease or virus, like the chicken pox, right? We just didn't jump in and go, oh, rub your kids up against everyone else, make sure you're, no, we didn't do that until we understood how to treat it. The other situation that we run into is that we will overwhelm our medical industry and all of the great and wonderful doctors and physicians out there if we just go out and herd immunize on this situation and we still don't know how to treat all of them. And as we discussed here, science is revealing that there's so many different strains. It's not practical at this time to overwhelm our medical industry. It's not practical. And I have to agree with Dr. Dhaman. There are so many people out there who this becomes fatal to, right? And when you begin herd immunity, it spreads faster. We know this. It's just going to spread. And we're going to put so many lives at risk that we will not be able to treat, that the fatality rate will go beyond what it did for the Spanish flu back in 1918, or some of the other plagues that hit our world that killed 50 to 60 million people at one time. So I think we need to not be instant gratified like we always are, or the microwave industry where we want everything now. And I think we need to think of our future and plan it. But that's just my opinion. It's not, I'm not medical. I'm not science. I'm just well read. I read a lot. So.
No, absolutely. Dr. Dhaman.
Yes, I have a comment to make that herd immunity is not something which you can prospectively plan for unless you have a vaccine. Herd immunity is that you can look upon things retrospectively. That, okay, fine, the infection was spreading, and at one point of time, it stopped spreading significantly. Why? Because herd immunity developed. You cannot plan for the herd immunity. Herd immunity will develop only if the infection actually spreads and involves a lot of the number of people. But in that process, a lot of number of people will die also, which is what we do not want to have.
Okay. I guess another question that's been kind of nagging at me has been simply this, that with all these discussions about the vaccine trials, they're doing a number of different trials in various places, but they're seeking volunteers. Now, I guess, I don't know, and I just want to ask the panel how you go about thinking. Would you want to volunteer for an untested vaccine in the COVID, or would you hold off and wait until others have come down and proven it?
I would have to be paid at least $500,000 to consider to do that.
That's all?
That's all.
$500,000 will do, because I still have chances to stay alive, and $500,000 will not hurt either. So I think it's a good proposition.
Okay. Ricky?
To be honest, I don't want to mess around with the virus. I would first try to understand how the vaccine worked. If it was something like the Oxford one where they're targeting the spike protein and maybe a range of spike proteins, I might look at that. But otherwise, I would be very chary of being a guinea pig.
Okay, so we have $500,000 per star. We have a hard no on Rakesh. Dr. Dhaman,
So I would say that it is always about the risk-benefit ratio. Okay. So if there's a volunteer is a person who is at a low risk of getting severe disease, say it's a young person who has got no other complicating factors, then the risk is small. And that risk is worth taking. Also, if the reward is, say, like $500,000 or $1 million, so maybe taking the risk-benefit ratio into account, a young person may be subjected to trial first, And once it is found to be effective in a large number of young volunteers, then one can go on to say people with slightly higher risk, slightly older groups. So there can be stepwise escalation of the thing. But yes, without trials, a vaccine will not come into a picture, will not come into effect. So trials have to be done. So somebody has to volunteer to get it done.
Okay, but would you be one of those people to volunteer, I guess?
Well, my age is against it. I am 58, but I do not have any other risk factor. So I can go for being a volunteer.
Okay. Kimberly, I mean, we've got the price tag on it. $500,000. This is going away if there are any takers.
So I'm going to be like Dr. Anthony. I don't want to be a test dummy. But seriously, I have a lot of health problems, and my age puts me in a very high risk as well. So I'm, the same age as Dr. Dhaman. So I really don't want to put myself or my family at risk because we don't know. And Dr. Arthur kind of scared me from the vaccines because he predicted what was going to go wrong during the trial, even with the healthy people, and it happened. So that's why he's now sitting on the board. So
if you could explain that a little more, because some of our viewers may not have had the opportunity to do
okay, so I can't scientifically say, but he predicted that there would be some kind of spinal and mind, to the brain, the nervous system, that it would attack it. And there was one of the trial patients that was somewhat healthy, and sure enough, it attacked the spine and brain and caused a lot of problems. So he predicted that this would happen, and it did.
And that was the vaccine trials that were shut down, I guess, in England, or which studies?
I think it was England. I hate that I'm not on top of it as well as he is, but I always rely on the doctors when they come in to have all the specifics. But because of his prediction, his foresight in doing the science, that's what we talk about here is the science of all of this, and that's why I'm glad that we have a doctor here as well to talk about too how it can impact our eyes, our minds, but when he had predicted this, it was so interesting because 2 weeks later, that's when it happened, and he came back on, and he has now been nominated to sit on the board for vaccines. But that's something that we have to take, into consideration is the risk versus the benefits.
Right.
The doctor said, and if you're putting right now, because there's still so much unknown and there's so many strains, you're putting even healthy lives at risk right now. I think we're jumping too fast. We just started this not even a year ago in China, not even 8 months ago. It seems like a long time here in the US, and we got a vaccine to test. I don't, where did they get it? I don't trust it.
Yeah, and I guess I raised the issue, and this is for the panelists, because it highlights not only how we individually might look at it, but if you're the head of a household and you've got your kids and they're young and maybe they are public spirited and they want to join these trials, I mean, it's important, I guess, to weigh these various things. Because certainly you can make a personal decision for yourself, but when your kid comes to you and says, hey, I'm thinking about joining this trial, I mean, obviously that's a very scary thing. And these conversations are going on around the world in various households. I'm curious, Sasha, how many would would then come in and underbid you, just to say he's too expensive, but I'm available. But
okay, before I will give you an answer, I would like to remind what we just talking before. All of you must know the tennis player by the name Novak Djokovic, supposedly the greatest tennis player of all times. Although he has a certain problem because he is not nearly as popular as Federer and Nadal, and he's suffering because of that. Mind you, he was organizing one small tennis tournament in Croatia or Serbia, I'm not so sure, somewhere in Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia, back in June or July this year, and all players there were only 4 players, all of them got infected with coronavirus, including Novak Djokovic himself. And the fact is now considering what's happened with him in US Open when he badly needed to win this tournament in the absence of Nadal and Federer. So he would catch Nadal and would get very close to Federer on the Grand Slams. He had incredible outburst and hit with the ball as a line judge, and he was immediately disqualified, kicked out of the tournament, fined $10,000 fine, and he was not paid at least probably $200,000 prize money that he already had. And if he would go on and win the tournament, he would win probably around $3 million. So the consequences were very, very heavy on him. Yet it seems to me that he couldn't control his temper when actually it was an accident in my opinion, because I saw many repetitions of that. But he was warned to be very careful when he kicks the ball because he can hurt somebody. So he knew about it, or maybe at that moment he just forgot. But there are definitely some psychological effects of coronavirus which are not being studied carefully enough.
So if I understand you correctly, Sasha, you're suggesting that his prior infection may have affected his later judgment as kind of a lingering.
Absolutely, 100%.
Doctor, what do you think about that? I mean, Kimberly, you raised this, and it was pointed out by Dr. Art. But Dr. Dhaman, I mean,
So coronavirus is known to affect the brain, is known to affect the smell, the taste, can affect the eyes also, has had some psychological effects as well. So it has had a wide variety of, it affects almost every part of the body and can have wide variety of effect. And there's no way to predict what can happen. So yes, there is a possibility that the player had some psychological after effects this virus which may have impaired his judgment or self-control. So it is possible. Regarding the case where the trial case where the vaccine affected the brain and the spine, every trial has these risks in it, and when a volunteer is taken, the volunteer has to sign a consent where it's explained that what are the possible risks. So the person who's volunteering is willing to take those risks. So there's nothing, nothing very big to be predicting about that. No, it is a fact that every trial has got a risk involved in it, and the volunteers are the ones who are taking that risk and getting rewarded for taking that risk also. And but without these risks, without the trials, it is not possible to bring out a vaccine or to have any drug or any treatment of any kind for any ailment.
No, and I'm glad that you brought us up to date on that, that there's some facts that we don't know that happens in trials, and that people do sign waivers to take the risk. And, I hate saying it this way, but, heroes don't always get to come home and march in a parade. And, to me, being a test subject for this, I called it a test dummy only because Dr. Anthony called it that. And that's rude. That's very, very rude for me to do that. But what I want to say is that all too often heroes don't come home to march in a parade. They come home in a casket, and we have to respect the people who are going to step forward to test this for us and put a lot of prayers behind them that we find the answer in the vaccine and that it comes out right, and be thankful for these people because it is scary.
I wouldn't mind. I'm sorry, it just came to my mind.
Go ahead.
You know what I'd like to see? That CEOs and presidents of all these pharmaceutical companies which are inventing this vaccine will take it upon themselves and their family and prove that they really work. That would convince me. And then I would, I actually, instead of $500,000 in this case, I would go for $100,000 because I would know that they would.
You take it first. That's right. The seller takes it first.
Yeah, let them prove it. In history, many esteemed doctors of medicine, when they were trying something, they were trying on themselves first, and if it worked, then they would offer it to other people. So I'd like to see that happen. That would make me very secure.
History is full of all kind of examples. Actually, there are a lot of trials which happened which were against the even against voluntarily, no. For forced trials also. Trials on the inmates in prisons and concentration camps also, those trials happen, no. So history is full of all the good and bad examples, but these days, yes, there are rules and norms to be followed. All the possible risks are explained to the volunteer accepts, So if, as long as this trial is done in a fair manner, for all the information given to the volunteer, and volunteer is properly compensated, and in the eventuality of any mishap, there is also bigger compensation. I think it's the right way to go about doing it, because there's no other way. There's no other way. Anything new, any new vaccine has to be first tested in some set of people. So it's better to test it on people who are willing to take that risk, rather than testing on the masses without any trials first.
And I guess on that point, maybe it's just a small nuance with the proliferation of strains, anywhere from 30 to 60 different mutations. We're not even sure which vaccines may be effective across all the strains, or whether or not they're individually tagged, like for one strain at a time. And so that makes it more uncertain, doesn't it, Dr. Dhaman?
Yes, it does. And there, now I mentioned it last time also, that the virus has got various spots, and when the strains are different, there's a lot of common genetic material. There's a lot of material which is common across the strain. If the vaccine is acting against that common material, it will be effective across the strains. But if it is acting only against the specific part, which is different for a particular strain, then it will not have any immunity or a benefit to the other strain. So it depends on how the vaccine is working, what is the mechanism of action.
Let me ask you this question. If vaccine indeed successfully works, right? So the vaccine basically is some bodies which are going inside of me, and they will affect respiratory tract and several other organs, but because it's a mild sort of thing, so it supposedly will disappear. Supposedly I will get antibodies and all that stuff. But again, as we discussed before, it will affect my brains. And what if that effect will stay on for months, if not years? How to mitigate this problem? Because we don't know nothing about that.
So if a vaccine trial shows that it's affecting the brain in an adverse way of a long duration, that vaccine will not be accepted for mass use. Only the particular vaccine which is safe, which has only very mild effects and is beneficial for a large number of people, will be actually put out in the market for mass use. No? So these trials are meant to find out that vaccine which works very well in most people and has got minimal side effects. Now I'll give you an example of, for example, polio vaccine. Polio was a big disease which is affecting the spine and the nervous system. And then a vaccine was created which was a live attenuated vaccine. So the virus was active virus, but it was a modified virus. It was given in the form of polio drops. The only thing it would give rise is a mild fever and slight cough, cold for a few days. After that, it would give rise to a strong immunity against polio, as a result of which the polio has been fully eradicated from India. So vaccines are effective, but yes, how soon an effective vaccine will come, there is no way to predict that. And for that, trials are required. And everybody is impatient to get the right vaccine. And so we should not criticize the trial part. As long as the trials are fair, with full disclosure to the volunteers, I think it is acceptable.
Sure. Rakesh.
Yeah, I strongly agree with Dr. Dhawan. I think he's spot on there. I'm high risk diabetic, hypertensive, so I wouldn't take a test dose. But once the vaccine is reasonably proven, which means we have some degree of knowledge of the risks, yeah, I would certainly go for it, because I'm not one of those ODD or odd people.
like Nick talked about, the opposition disorder. Yeah.
Not one of those odd people. Very even man.
Opposition defiant disorder.
Just be part of the team.
And I guess just another lingering kind of question, Kimberly, for you. Obviously, your thoughts on this, but also you raised an interesting point. Oftentimes when we face a national crisis, like war, we see the caskets come home, and that has an impact. And here we are, at least in the United States, with over 200,000. But there really hasn't been a focus on caskets. Do you think that would make a difference with people complying with the, suggestions from Dr. Dhaman and everyone about wearing?
So I've been on top of this from day one. The first question I posed the minute I heard that this virus was becoming a pandemic was, I started doing research. What is the final impact to the human body?
Mhm.
Right. That was my biggest concern. I didn't want to know anything else. I just wanted to know what is the damage that can happen. And so I started reading the white papers on it. And I saw a potential for high fatality rate because of the damage that it can cause if we're not getting treated properly. And when you overwhelm the medical industry, you will do that. So then we saw what happened to Italy, right? I cried. Every report I read, and Sasha was there too, we were just in tears. And because even the doctors were dying. So that's when I realized that this is far greater than what any of us could even have foreseen. You could not have told even the doctors that this was that dangerous. And then that's what impacted me. But I'm going to tell you what impacted me the most the other day is a prayer that Dr. Sagu posted for the doctors, because the doctor just passed away. And the most impactful picture I have seen, it was a picture of a coffin being carried away.
Mm-hmm.
And this doctor gave her life on the front line to serve us heroically, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we're not taking the precaution here by disrespecting them by wearing the mask that we should be wearing. We're not supporting them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that coffin impacted my day more than any other picture I saw that day.
Mm.
So I do think coffins were.
No, Kim, a couple of days ago, I saw absolutely overwhelming program, I think on CNN, where a young doctor, she was graduated just last year probably, and it was her first baby delivery in the hospital. And there was a picture of her, she was holding a baby, she was 28 years old. And she died because of the coronavirus, and it was interviewed with her parents, who were not that old people, so they're in their 50s, probably late 50s maybe. And they were very calm. Mother was asked, so what was she like? What was the person that was she? She said she was a very cheerful person, and she was looking forward to be employed as a doctor, and that was a dream of her life. And then she's describing her last couple of days. She already couldn't communicate, and mother was trying to send her messages, and then she was finally allowed with a heavy protection to go into a room with her, and she's asking if she could hear me. And she said, yeah, I can hear you, Mom. And I love you so much. And they were basically saying goodbye to each other. And then her father talked a little bit too. And, you can't watch that without crying. Absolutely impossible.
Right.
Yeah, you can't. And every moment of this has been devastating. We try to become the positive, happy news. But Bill, to answer your question, I think the stacks of coffins that they had in New York, I don't even think they've had proper burials. And Dr. Dhaman, I don't know what it's like in India at this moment or anywhere else in the world, but that's something we should fight to prevent. And I think that if we stop the mass spreading, get it under control, and this is something that I have to commend South Africa for, is they did 5-stage program, and they told their people, when we get this under control to so many thousands and it stays that way for so many months, then we're going to go to the next stage.
Mm-hmm.
When we get it under control to so many, lesser thousands, and it stays like this for a couple of weeks, then we're going to go to this stage. Mm-hmm. So what they did was they made their people root for getting rid of the spread. They made their people work for it and inspired to work for it, because wow, when we get down to here, we only have 1,000 people, and it stays that way for 3 weeks or 6 weeks. We're stable enough to go back to live. And they inspired you with the countdown, right? And that reduced the fatality rates, that reduced the massive spreads, which we're back again to having massive spreads here in our state. We're spreading again. We're not containing.
Mhm.
So, but Dr. Dhaman, I know that your time is special with us here. Some of the things that I am concerned about is if a person gets COVID in the eyes, is there enough information out there that presents if it could become damaging and if so, permanent?
So regarding the eye part, it does lead to acute conjunctivitis, a viral conjunctivitis, which is typically like any other conjunctivitis. It can also cause inflammation around the eye, in the eye. But as I said earlier once also, that we have seen an increased number of cases of optic neuritis. We have not been able to find any direct correlation with COVID, but there's a possible risk of increased incidence of optic neuritis. Optic neuritis can be potentially sight-threatening. However, my cases, they responded very well to the steroid treatment. They recovered very, very well. But yes, it is causing any very different kind of disease presentation in different parts of the body, especially in the eye. So in and around the eye, inflammation is a very, very common phenomena. Fortunately, not leaving behind a permanent damage, provided it is picked up early and treated appropriately.
Okay, actually, for our audience, what are some of the symptoms of that, so that people may know?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
So basically, in the eyes, there is redness, there is watering, there is irritation, there is swelling of the lids. The eyes feel very, very sore. You may not like the light very much. Like a typical red eye or conjunctivitis it presents. In addition, the swelling may be a little bit more. Very typically, left eye is affected first, right eye is affected later on, and the conjunctivitis may last for about 1 to 2 weeks or so. Then there would be other symptoms alongside conjunctivitis. There may be fever, there may be cough. If those symptoms are also there, then one needs to be tested for COVID. If it is purely conjunctivitis and there is no other symptom, then one can simply wait and watch for it to settle down. Simple cold compresses, some plain antibiotic eye drops, some anti-inflammatory eye drops are the treatment of choice for them. But if the patient is testing positive for COVID, then full treatment for the COVID is required.
Wow.
Okay,
Wow.
that's interesting to know, and I'm glad to hear that giving some advice on when to potentially consider getting tested for COVID. I don't know about other countries right now, but I know that we've picked up the pace for testing here, just in our state. What about you, Dr. Dhaman?
Yeah, so the testing has increased in India also, but it is mostly the rapid antigen test, which is done more frequently, which has got a false negative rate of about 50%. But again, 50% positive rate is a good enough rate, better than not doing anything at all. RT-PCR also is increasing, but the vast majority of tests which are being done are the rapid antigen tests. So the number of tests have increased. There's a relaxation now. Anybody can walk in and get the tests done. So there's no formalities to be fulfilled for those tests. So which is a good thing. And that is also the reason why the number of reported cases is much higher now.
Right.
Good point. Rakesh, how is it in your country? Is the testing increased?
Hong Kong, there's not much of a problem, really. We've got the person identified with symptoms. They report it. We test it, and then we know that there's a case. We don't have to do sort of mass testing because it's a small population, it's just about 7 million, and the elephant in the room for all of this is that we have to understand this planet is calibrated for 2 billion. We're 7 billion. That
right.
It's got to be understood, and if we don't correct it, nature will correct it, just like it has done.
Right, right. Which is always, I guess, one of the scarier prospects. Because, it just seems to me that we're at a point in time where it seems like we've lived with this for so long, even though, Kimberly, you're right, it's merely a stone's throw away that this started. But yet people are now becoming just, inoculated to the idea of the death tolls and what you have to do as a daily regimen, and that they really need to be diligent because of the potential effects, whether it's long-term damage to your thought process or your eyesight or any other kinds of physical conditions. And
just think of any natural processes. If you look at wildebeest or any animal that is prey to a predator, the oldest and the youngest, the most vulnerable, die first. But this is what Corona is doing. So this is a natural process. This is going to happen. And if we've got all these, I would say, non-logical dogmas where they say go forth and multiply in different languages, different things, that is your formula for extinction.
Wow.
Wow.
There you have it. We have, I think, do we have a new guest coming in?
Yes, we do. And I didn't want to delay too much longer. Before we do, or as I bring her in, it's Jimois. But I want to say happy anniversary to Dr. Dhaman. Happy anniversary.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
One of your fans has sent you a happy anniversary wish. I think there's another one that popped in while we were talking. And then, of course, we have a birthday today to Rakesh. So we're celebrating all kinds of wonderful things in life.
Happy birthday, Rakesh ji. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you
Right?
so much.
But we also have another guest from California, Jimois.
Good morning.
And welcome to our Medical Friday talk today. Some of the things that we're talking about is Dr. Dhaman is an eye specialist and from India. And so, of course, we've talked about the importance of good eye coverage during COVID and the damage, that it can get in and cause, what we call normal viruses. But what are some of your thoughts about, we moved on into testing. What are some of your thoughts on the testing in your neck of the woods?
For coronavirus?
Yes.
So our COVID-19 cases are still rising because of the agricultural workers mostly who don't have access to social distancing at work. So testing is essential. And I'm concerned about the accuracy of the testing still in terms of positives and negatives. But I think it's really important to keep monitoring it, especially for school and distance learning. So, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm curious. Have they stepped up the stations, and are they using the I guess it's the PCR test versus the embodies the rapid test? Have they changed?
So I think it's a matter of access based on socioeconomic and work accessibility. And I was just talking to a friend last week who got sick and she couldn't find any tests. And it's that catch-22 where she wasn't sick enough or she was too sick, and the availability of the tests was poor. So she didn't take a test because she couldn't find it. We do in California have free testing, but I guess it's limited in certain places, and she's in Silicon Valley. So yeah, I think it's still a problem.
I agree. I think I don't understand why they haven't sent out to us rapid test kits to every home. I know that they're available because of some work that I was doing in the very beginning of all of this, that I was helping people connect resources from one business to another. So, providers, distributors, and stuff like that, so that doctors could get better access to the test kits and PPE equipment. So I was because people would see us on TV and go, "Hey, I got this," right? And I go, "Well, hey, call this person." Anyway, I know that they exist. I know they're not as expensive as the in charge because I know what they cost on wholesale. And to me, it would have been cheaper to send each of us a rapid test kit every day so that we could test and go back to work, test every day like you do for diabetes or something else. Very simple prick, right? And like Dr. Dhaman said, yeah, the rate of it being positive testing results is not great, but it's better than doing nothing at all, right?
Right.
So then we get everybody testing, right? You isolate the flare-ups and you control it, and people can get back to work. That would have been better than the $300 check they sent us, because that didn't help me any at all. It helped some people. I hate to be rude about it, but $300 was not enough to pay for most people's rent, let alone food. So to me, it would have been more cost effective. They could have sent that kit out every month, right?
Right.
And it doesn't have to be every family member test. Think about this. We isolate it, right? So just test one family member every day. And then, if one of you become positive, the one who's going to work every day or going out in the world every day, then odds are all of you are going to become positive. So to me, there's some logical sense that we're not using. I mean, Bill, I'm going to pass this to you. What do you think about that?
Well, I generally agree with the doctor, and as well as you, that testing is the best and fastest way, even if it's only at a 50% accuracy rate, for us to identify the hot spots. Because once we identify the hot spots, then we can go in, say, with other resources and more accurate testing and get a better idea on it. But the issue is seeing how it spreads. Because right now, and I'll just take a step back. A couple of weeks back, we had the motorcycle thing in, I believe, South Dakota, where Sturgis, they all came together and they celebrated and had a good time. And then they all dispersed, and they called that a super spreader, as you know, Doctor. But then they went all back to their various states, and then we saw spikes in various states like Iowa, where the rates suddenly dramatically jumped. And it seems to me, first, the issue of the super spreader events is really troubling, because that's part of that ODD disorder that I just object and am defiant and I can't help myself. But by then going back into the state, if we can test and isolate, then we can bring more resources to bear. But the thing that's really scary about it, at least from what I've observed so far, and I open this up to the panel, I know that we had talked about, would you personally volunteer for a study? And it seems to me that in some respects, people are already volunteering to get the virus when they attend some of Trump's rallies, or they attend these other large events where they openly flaunt protective measures and they just don't follow them. They are openly courting, it seems to me, disaster and some of the long-term effects that Sasha, you raised with the tennis player. But I'm open to listening, because it really is a serious thing, and I don't know how we can collectively drive the message home to that portion of the population that somehow thinks it's not going to happen to them.
And you raise a good red flag there, but unfortunately, I think Dr. Dhaman has to take leave and have dinner with his family, and of course, anniversary dinner, I hope.
Yeah.
But Dr. Dhaman, do you have any good, wise words to wrap up with us until we see you again?
So I'll say that number one, wear the mask, wear some glasses, keep your hands clean when you go out now. And when you're indoors, take care of your eyes, because you're looking at the screens throughout the day. So take frequent breaks, take enough rest, exercise regularly, take a balanced diet so that your immunity is also good. And I'll see you again maybe next week. Thank you very much for having me on the show. I'll take leave of all of you. Bye.
Thank you so much, and enjoy your evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. What a pleasure he is.